Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 105. Egotism is not a good quality. It is not something to be admired or even tolerated. It wouldn't be tolerated of a field commander, and it shouldn't be tolerated of a movie director. John Milius.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by VideoBlocks. Now, VideoBlocks is a subscription-based stock media company that gives you unlimited access to premium stock footage everyone could afford. If you're looking for like extra exterior shots or things that you might want to incorporate into any of your projects, whether that be a narrative, documentary, music videos, commercials, these guys got you covered. They've got unlimited daily downloads from a library of over 115,000 HD video clips, as well as a huge selection of After Effects templates for like opening credits, motion graphics titles, company logos, as well as motion backgrounds as well. It's pretty amazing. And on average, subscribers pay less than $1 per download in a course of a year. And the content does not get stale. They're constantly adding new content to the library every month. So it keeps it very, very fresh, and you always have something new to look forward to. And everything you download is 100% royalty free. Even if your subscription is canceled, you have unrestricted usage rights for anything you want to do, including personal projects and commercial projects. And you keep whatever you download and maintain the usage rights forever. Now, VideoBlocks is offering The Tribe a yearly subscription for $99. That's $50 off the usual price tag, just for you guys, just for The Tribe. That's less than $10 a month. So to get this deal, just head over to videoblocks.com/hustle. That's VideoBlocks, VIDEO blocks.com/hustle for this exclusive offer. And don't forget to go to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com to download your free filmmaking audiobooks from Audible. So guys, today on the show, we have a very special returning guest. After popular demand, Suzaane Lyons, the indie film producing guru, is going to be on the show today. She was on the show she was, I think, episode 11. So we're in episode 105 now, so I'll tell you how long ago. A little bit under, probably about a year ago or so, she was on the show. And it's been easily one of the most popular podcasts in the entire series of Indie Film Hustle. She just drops knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb. And I wanted to bring her back. And, a year has passed. And, in the indie film world, a year is like dog years. There's so much stuff that changes and information needs to be updated. So I wanted to bring her back and ask her some questions about what's going on in the film world today, what she's been up to as far as indie film producing, what she's seen out there in the world. And also, for a lot of you guys that don't know, Suzaane has been teaching for a better part of over a decade now. And she's been given these very, these amazing workshops on independent film producing. And she hasn't done one in about 6 years. But after all of her students, her old students, her new people who want to kind of take this class again, they started to pound her and hound her till she finally broke down and said, sure, I'll finally do one. So she's doing another workshop. So if you guys are in the Los Angeles area or can make it into the Los Angeles area, she's going to be giving one of her 1-day workshops, which and I'll tell you, we'll go into it in the interview. But I'm telling you, you guys, if you're in the area, you owe it to yourself if you're going to make a movie to go and take this course. It is mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. So if you stay and listen to the entire episode, at the end, if you are, of course, an Indie Film Hustler podcast listener, you will get a special discount, saving you almost $150 on the final cost of the course. And it's very intimate. There's only going to be 12 people. So there's only, I think, about 4 spots left. So definitely move quickly if you're interested. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the knowledge bombs that are dropped by the returning champion, Suzaane Lyons. I would like to welcome back to the show Miss Suzanne Lyons. Thank you so much for coming back, Suzanne.
Oh, wow. Thank you for having me, Alex. That's great. I'm thrilled to be back.
You are only the second guest in over 100 episodes to be asked back to the show.
Oh, my God. Thank you. I feel privileged, and it being my birthday today.
That's right.
I feel like this is a lovely birthday gift.
Happy birthday. You look fantastic for 20. You look fantastic for 25.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I wanted to bring.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring you back because your last episode, which was probably the first, I think it was episode 11 of the podcast. So many people have talked to me about it, and so many. I know a lot of people have reached out to you about that episode.
Yes.
Because of people really, really loved it, and you had so much amazing information that people were just soaking it all up like a sponge. So I wanted to come back, have you come back a little bit so I can introduce you again to all the new listeners since then. It's grown a little bit since back then. And and then also kind of go over some new stuff that we didn't go over last time. So are you ready, my dear?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready. Just don't ask me any, hard questions like calculus or not great with calculus.
No, don't worry
times
about
table. I'm terrible with the times table.
No problem. So, can you discuss a little bit about how you option a screenplay? Because I know that's a question a lot of people, indie filmmakers, have when they don't have a screenplay. What do you actually do? What's the process in general?
Yeah, and the process is really important to note that we have to option a screenplay because so many times, just to give you a little bit of background, Alex, so many times people assume that they don't need paperwork. Oh, Suzanne, they say to me, yes, I'm a producer, but I'm the creative type. I'm really not about the paperwork. Alex, honest to God, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said that to me, I'd be a millionaire. I swear to God, it's uncanny. There's no other industry in the world that people would talk like that.
Right.
It's like, I'd like to sell you some of my land, Alex, but let's not bother with the paperwork. Let's just, do a handshake. I mean, there's no place, no industry, but in this industry, for some reason, well, we're the creative types. We don't get into the business part of it. And I've actually had one of my friends who did not do any of my workshops in the past call me from France one time and, crying on the phone about a movie that she had done a couple years ago. Now sales agents were interested in it. And I said, oh, you're crying because you're happy. She said, no, I'm crying because they asked me for the chain of title. Based on the option agreement and then, the transfer of the option and the chain of title to the movie and so on. And she said, I don't have that. And I said, you didn't do that? And she said, no, I didn't even do the option agreement. And I said, well, did you call the writer? And, I know it's 2 years later. And she said, I did. And the writer said that she had had a fight in the interim with the director. And as far as she was concerned, the movie could burn in hell.
Lovely.
Lovely. So, and I was thinking, please tell me that was your own money, that you raised that money on. No, I have investors. And I'm thinking, you know what? If it was her own Visa cards, I don't care.
Uh-huh.
If it's investors, this is a business. The word, business is twice as big as the word show, show business,
Yeah. I by the way, I've stolen that line. I've used it multiple times on the show. So thank you. I always give you credit, but thank you.
Oh, thank you. But I mean, it's crazy, doesn't it? And so, here she was with this movie and with investors to pay back, and it will never, ever see the light of day because she didn't do the first most important thing is the option agreement. You've got to get the paperwork. Get the paperwork done. And people would say, well, Suzanne, she was my best friend.
Mm-mm.
Or, it was family. It was my cousin. I don't care if it's your mom. Get the paperwork.
Now, let me ask you a question. So let's say there's a script that's been written, and then and it's written together with the director. Let's say the writer and the director are kind of working together on it, but the writer is going to be the one that gets the copyright on it. They send in the copyright to the copyright office, but they copyright it to the LLC. So the LLC that they put together owns that property. Is that the right way? Is that the right chain of command? Or chain of title? You're
saying that the writer has an LLC? Usually a writer does.
No. The movie. So the movie's been produced. The movie has an LLC. The writer has now copywritten the screenplay to the LLC because the writer's part of the process. He's a producer as well.
No, the writer hasn't done that. The writer's done the initial option.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Right. I mean, the initial copyright, right?
Well, the initial copyright, the only copyright that exists is to the LLC. So
no. The writer probably did. A lot of writers do a copyright, of their screenplay, or they should. Not all of them do. And if they don't, then usually once like, for example, in one of the cases on one of my projects, the writers had not done that. And I think 2 different cases in 12 films where the writer had not done that. And so I just went ahead and put it directly under the LLC. Mm-hmm. But most writers know enough to do their own copyright. They should.
But what I'm saying is that in the scenario that I'm telling you, the writer is also a producer on the movie and is part owners of the LLC that made the movie. Then when after the movie was made, they're like, oh, we should copyright this screenplay. That screenplay, then he went in and copyrighted underneath that LLC that they jointly own. So that's the only copyright that is available for that screenplay. It's to the LLC that made the movie. Is that the proper chain of title is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. What's going to happen is you're going to have an option agreement. And the option agreement would give me let's say you are the writer. You got to switch hats. I wouldn't use the word writer again. I would switch it to, even if it's you, Alex, you're the writer and the director and the producer. But let's move the word over to producer, because the minute signed, that's why that's what's confusing is when you say then the writer's going to put it under the LLC. No, the writer is now become the producer. It's months and maybe years later, right? Since you've written that script. Even if it's your own script, you still have to have the option agreement because you're going to need it for delivery for your sales agents when the time comes, right?
Got it.
Here's the scary part, as part of that option agreement, there's many times inside that option agreement, I promise you, and I had this very problem years ago on one of the projects, there was no page attached to it, Exhibit B or Assignment B or Assignment A or whatever, that said the transfer could happen. Honestly, I've read many option agreements that did not have that page in it. So if that paragraph page is not there, for the love of God, make sure you attach one. And it's actually in my book, and I teach it in my classes too. I very strongly teach it because I have made that mistake. And this was when I had an attorney on board. This was an early film when I actually had an attorney who gave me this option agreement, and there was no transfer page attached to it. So you've got that, and that transfer page is very important because also your delivery, it's going to be on your delivery list as well. It'll have to be stapled to the option agreement, and sometimes that delivery page is stapled to the copyright form that you've gotten back from the government. So what'll happen is when that is signed early on, and now it's a year later, you've raised the money, you're making your movie, and so on, then what will happen is you now have the right. You've paid the purchase price. It's only when you've paid the purchase price. It's not when you make the option. Because let's say you spend $10 for 18 months on an option, but let's say the writer's going to be making $10,000. When you're making the movie. So it's only when you pay the full purchase price that you now, the LLC, I'm talking you, the producer, even if it's still you, the writer, but let's switch so people aren't confused. So now you, the producer, owner of the LLC, whatever the name of the movie is, a lot of the times, Candy Stripers LLC, in my case, for example, then you get to use that transfer page and you send off the copyright. It's not like it used to be. It's actually called a transfer copyright. You go online, you still go on to the same place on copyright, but it's actually a little different form now. I just did it for Time Toys, the movie I shot in the past year, and I was surprised to find it is a bit of a different form. Still only, $40 or $50 or $60. It's not a big deal, but it's a different form. And what that transfer page is showing is that you the minute you get your purchase price amount of $5,000 or $10,000 or $60,000, whatever we're paying you as the writer, then that gives me, the producer owning the LLC, the right to then send it back in to Washington. But in the author section won't say Alex anymore. Right? The author section will now say, Candy Stripers, LLC.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. So now can you talk a little bit about business plans and why do you need a business plan if you're trying to raise money for a movie?
Yes, I will in a second, but let's just finish the copyright for one second.
Okay, sure. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, there's one more piece. What's going to happen next is, right now, what's happening on Time Toys is we're delivering, right? So one of the things on the delivery item, and I spoke with my co-partner yesterday, it was his first time producing, my co-producer on this, and he's also the writer-director. And because what's due is the copyright report. And what he said to me on the phone yesterday is, well, Suzanne, isn't that just the paperwork that we did on the transfer and so on? And that information, from Washington, that came back. And I said, no, it's not. A copyright report is something where you hire an attorney who does that. Like I use Dennis Angel's company in New York, for example. It's around $650 or whatever. Unfortunately, that's why you've got to save money in your budget, because now a year later, right? Exactly a year later. And that copyright report is then the attorney going online to make sure that, yes, this was all done. This happened. It was a clear copyright. There are no other copyrights under this thing. There's no liens against it. There's no issues with it, and so on and so on. So I just want to point that out, that, a year after the movie, when you're delivering or whenever that happens to be, that you will need a copyright report showing that there is indeed a copyright.
Interesting. You see, this is all the kind of stuff that they don't teach you in film school, or you don't learn until you go through the process at least once. Because,
that's right. And sometimes the painful way of, oh my God.
I'm like, what? I didn't know that. What? So, what do you mean I can't release my movie that I just spent a year and a half putting together? Why? Because of a piece of paper that I didn't get? Oh my God. So it's all, definitely need to get all that stuff done.
Lots of crazy stuff. So with the business plan, the reason for the business plan is because a lot of the times, a couple of reasons. One, sometimes you start with a business plan that doesn't have any PPM, LLC operating agreement, none of that kind of legal stuff in it, saying that that you're 50% owner as an investor and you're going to be getting 110% back and da. It's sometimes just the business plan. I've done one, let's say for Oh Mother Camel, where it might be some pieces, some great artwork that we had done, for the animation for that, that Christmas, feature, animated feature. The bios on the people that are involved, they're impressive. The writer, director, and producers. Maybe a whole page on the demographic and the direction it's going to go from a marketing point of view. A lot of times it's showing other, movies, in this case, Christmas animated specials and features that have done well, movie comparisons. Kind of your project objective, what the point of doing this is. Maybe it's going to be the first of a slate of Christmas projects that you're going to be doing in the animation world. Things like that. So it's really kind of about that marketing plan that people do in other businesses, your
cookie business, gourmet business, whatever. Sure.
Every business, you do a marketing plan. What usually mine are for is I usually do mine in addition to that little packet that I do with my PPM and my operating agreement and my subscription agreement in it for the investor. So it's usually, I don't usually bother doing two separate ones. I usually make it all one packet. The minute I have my LLC, from the state of California, with the name of the movie or whatever I've decided to call the LLC, Candy Stripers, comma LLC, then I'm legally able to go out and start, raising the money, they're called shares or units or whatever you want to call them. And then I've kind of sorted that out in advance. Then I do up my PPM, my operating agreement, my subscription agreement, and then I can go to you and say, Alex, I'm raising these units of 7,500. My budget's going to be 225,000. It's SAG ultra low or whatever it happens to be, and or my units are 3,000 and my budget is 50,000 and whatever. So usually I'll include my business plan. I'll put that page in there as well, showing you what you're getting, Alex, for doing that. You're going to be getting as an investor, 120%, with a corridor of 90-10, so that as the money comes in, you, the investors, will get 90%.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
I'll be getting as the producer 10% until you reach your full 120, and then we become 50-50 partners, for the next 5 years or 10 years or however big the budget is. Sometimes I don't keep it open too awfully long if I'm not raising a lot of money from each person, because I don't want to be, there's cost involved, especially in California. It's $800 a year to have an LLC, and there's you're obviously your accountant. Your accountant's $400 or $500. Even if you do your own accounting, he still has to do your K1s. So if I've got 30 K1s because I've got, $7,500 from 30 people, those K1s are going to cost me money to do. I can't do those on my own. That's definitely got to be an accountant. So I'm going to be putting out money if it's an ongoing open LLC. So I close it after a certain amount of time. Most of the money for a film comes in the first 2 years anyway. Believe me, your sales agent has lost interest by then.
Right.
For sure. He's gone to 6 markets. Usually they only bother with 3, and then you're on a back burner somewhere forever. So most of the money's coming in that first, 1 or 2 years. But I usually leave the LLC open for 5 years, if it's, depending on the budget.
Now, after you close the LLC, let's say obviously money will still hopefully come in, or some new distribution revenue stream would come up. Like, all of a sudden Netflix allows you to upload directly, and they're paying $5,000 a picture or something like that, or whatever the new revenue stream might be. What happens then? Do you just transfer everything over to your core production company?
I did. That's exactly what I would do. I haven't been so lucky as to do what you just mentioned. To have that
I wish.
A lot of, really. But nowadays things are a little different. With self-distribution, there could be ongoing money coming in, and so on and so on. And like you mentioned, Netflix and all of those. Yes, I would turn that over to the core, because that bank account is open constantly. That my Snowfall Films account has been around for since '98 or whatever, and that corporation is every year. So I would do that for sure.
Now, can you talk a little bit about what's the importance of opening up? We keep talking about LLC. What is the importance of opening up an LLC for your film specifically, not a production company LLC? What's the difference, and why would you open up an LLC per film?
I would open an LLC per film just because you don't want your umbrella company. You don't want Snowfall Films, just like Disney and all of those companies. You think, oh, well, that's a Disney film. Not really, because even Disney will have taken out every single film under a different entity, because if there is a lawsuit against, let's say, Candy Stripers, for example, then, you don't want that affecting your overall company. Of Snowfall Films and shutting things down and having liens against your overall company, and then you're paralyzed for the next 5 years in terms of making any films whatsoever. What it does is it just affects Candy Stripers LLC. Period.
So it's a safety net. It's a safety net to protect you, the filmmaker / producer, against anything that might happen to it. So if someone slips and falls on the set, they're not suing the mother company. They're going to only be able to sue the LLC because that's the company creating the movie.
Exactly. And I believe, and we can check, with an attorney, because laws are changing all the time. I can't go out and raise money under my corporation for those individual movies either, as far as I know. That might have changed, but I remember at the time asking that question to my attorney when Kate and I were doing those early movies. And he was saying, no, as a corporation, you can't be raising money for those individual entities. That has to be a separate entity, and they had to be called an LLC. It depends on which country you're in. Sometimes, like a corporation in Canada, I believe you can do both. You'd still want to have a separate one for your movie, but you can still raise money, as far as I know, under a corporation. There is no LLC in Canada. In the UK, it's a different entity, too. I remember when we did movies in the UK, I think it was called an LTD or whatever. So, and you were able to have that as an umbrella and still open entities to raise money, so you could do both. But in the States, I believe you can't raise money under the corporation. I think it's under an LLC. But I'm not positive of that, because, like I said, we need to ask a question to the attorney, because laws change so much.
Now, have you ever crowdfunded?
No, I never did. I
Okay.
tried one time for Omar the Camel. I was going to do that just to kind of raise that initial money to help get things more off the ground, because that one was costly. When you're doing, animation, a feature animation, and I mean, just getting the development alone was costing a fortune. Just getting a lot of those pictures done, because it's a different kind of business plan. You want it's much more visual for the investors. And but I found it was so time consuming. It was so early on. That was back when crowdfunding literally was just starting.
Right.
That I found it just very difficult. If I were, I could probably go back and try it again because people have been, successful. There's ways to do it now. I mean,
no, absolutely.
About it, but no, I've never done that. But it's nice because it doesn't conflict with your investors, because it's called a donation. It's not called an investment, so it doesn't affect if you're still wanting to go to investors to raise the majority of your money. Then that's great. I think we have to get very, very, very smart these days about all of that, because it's no longer just about the demographic. That's the only word we used years ago. I used to work in promotions for a TV network for years, in my early years, and the only word used was demographic, and that's you would promote to that demographic, 18 to 24 men or whatever it happened to be, right? Or children, 6 to 10 or something. Now it's all about the psychographics as well. When we were doing Time Toys, we started early on. I went to the writer, who was also the writer and the director and the producer, and I said to Mark, let's look at the script now and see what we can do to make sure that psychographics are there, that we can reach out. And I had learned this, from another. I'm with Vocal Press, and there was another writer with Vocal Press. Where his book was about this very thing. It's not just about the crowdfunding, but how do you do the crowdsourcing? Crowdfunding means nothing if you're not, very, very intelligent about crowdsourcing, and that's where this whole psychographic comes in. And what I was learning from reading parts of his book, because I had to, which we do for each other at Focal Press, is that people were literally being very smart about the script early on, not waiting till it was, being shot or afterwards going, oh shit, why didn't I do that? Like, for example, in one of the chapters, he talked about this script that was, that they were looking at seriously in terms of making sure that they had enough different arms of kind of the octopus, let's say, to go to when the movie was done, right, online, because it's all about online. And they made one of their characters a vegan. And they started the whole thing online, that whole discussion about how this script was going to have a raw vegan character. And they ended up getting a couple of 100,000, people, blogging about this script that was not even in production yet. This was months prior, that from the vegan community, for God's sakes, right? So can you imagine if you had 10 different arms, reaching out to all the different online entities, where because I remember when I was working on a World War I movie that I have about the spies, and they were children actually that had served as spies, because all the men were on the front lines back then. And I was doing the movie with Empower Pictures at the time. We were working on it together in development, anyways, and ended up going off into a different direction. But I remember sitting with them. And this is before I had even read this section of that book, years later. This was back in 2012 with Empower. And their attorney was sitting there going, okay, now where does it reach? What's the demographics and what are the psychographics? And I said, well, it's kind of like Stand By Me. It'll be for young people. Obviously, it's teenagers. It's about teenagers, and it'll be teenagers in the movie. But it's also kind of a family film. So I was very limited in my thinking. And he said, no, Suzanne. Yes, but no. What are the other areas? And I said, well, I don't understand. And honest to God, I really didn't understand. And he was there. What about veterans? This is World War. It's a war movie, right? And I said, yeah, it actually takes place in World. Okay, so there's the veterans. Okay, what else? And he kept pushing us in that boardroom that day for all of us to brainstorm. Who are those other entities?
Little niches of people, subcultures, yeah.
Moms, because it's, it's about the moms worrying about their sons being at the war too. And in this case, children being at war, on the front lines. So how do we reach those moms? And all of a sudden we had 10 different entities in addition to my limited thinking of, kids 6 to 10 or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or, kids 12 to 18. Like, all of a sudden it became all these different areas that we could then start tapping into now. For example, if we had continued on with that particular project, that you could have started tapping into online.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Start talking to the veterans, talking to or whatever about this was going to be, being brought out, and I could have been. Anyways, it was a fascinating thing, but I realized how, when we stay in that kind of creative box for ourselves and don't think inside the business world, we become limited, and then all of a sudden it's time to start selling it to your sales agents and distributors, and it's like you've boxed yourself in. To a smaller area for them to sell to, when you could have had them banging on your door, because guess what? I've got 40,000 fans already in Japan because we've done such and such, or we've added, or the vegan character, or 200,000 in America that are already itching to see the movie. You'll have distributors and sales agents banging on your door as opposed to you having to go to them. Or if you're self-distributing, God, all the better, because then you've got a whole, entity to sell to. So just kind of those types of things that I think we have to be so much more privy to. It's not just about having the name, although that is still of major importance, which nobody gets. Nobody gets that still, shockingly. You still have to have the name in your movie. You still have to talk to sales agents at the beginning, the minute you option your screenplay and start development. You start talking to sales agents, go to AFM, go to markets, get on the phone with sales agents, become friends with them now, find out, I'm looking to put in, this particular actor in my movie because it's got a sci-fi bend to it, and I'd like to put in, this sci-fi kind of actor. Is that enough? Given my budget's $900,000.
Right.
And they'll say no. You know what? His name at a $200,000. A SEG Ultra Low 250 would be fine, but at the SEG Modified, you know what? You got it at 900,000. With all these minorities you're putting in there, and this is great, but you still need that other name. That he's great for the feature name, but you still need the TV name. Somebody from the TV sci-fi world, because we sell mostly for foreign, it's mostly television, right? For domestic, we kind of think more feature.
So that was the thing when we were having coffee the other day. It was interesting for you to say that TV actors are a lot of times much bigger deals overseas than movie stars here in the States, purely because those TV shows are in constant rotation throughout these other territories. So that's case in point, David Hasselhoff.
There you go.
But so we laugh. He's laughing all the way to the bank. But I mean, him and Pamela Anderson and those people from Baywatch, they had overseas, because it was the biggest television show of all time, they could sell all day. I know actors like Michael Pare, who's a really great actor. He did a few movies. He's over there all the time. Richard Tyson, anyone who has had these TV shows, and of course, like in the sci-fi world, anyone who's ever been on a Star Trek show or Stargate or any of these things that they're just constantly rotating have a lot of value, and you can affordably get them here in the States.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing, is you've got to be thinking business all the time. So you can't. I talk to people, say, well, I finished my movie. Now I'm going to start talking to sales agents, and I'm thinking, you're just now talking to sales agents? You didn't talk to them a year ago? Like a year ago, you didn't start forming relationships then and finding out if those stars are big enough for that budget size? Like, come on, guys. Once again, I say to my students, and, because I teach the class, I haven't had a chance to teach in almost 6 years, but, I've been busy. I did 4 movies in the past 5 years. But, what I say is, if it's your visa, I don't give a shit. Honest to God, you blow whatever you want. If it's your own money, do whatever you want. I don't care. Nobody cares, But if you are even investing, have one investor. If it's your dad, you know what? You owe that person the everything to be a business person. You are a business person, and you therefore start thinking like what I tell people, even when I spoke at Hal's class recently, Screenwriting U, it's all writers in the room, and I have the very same conversation with them as I do with somebody like you, Alex, who's a producer. It's kind of like, you don't get the right to not think like a business person. Everyone, I don't care if you're the makeup artist, you are the president and CEO of your company. And when you take that on, all of a sudden you start thinking differently, you sit differently, your posture is different, your language is different, your speaking is different, how you dress is different. This is a business. It would be as insane, and I think I talked about this on the last podcast I did with you, as me saying to you, Alex, I've always wanted to be a heart surgeon, Now, I've never done any courses, Alex, but I have a really good knife. Okay, I've got a good I haven't had the chance to get it sharpened yet, but it's really comfortable. I feel good with it. And Alex, I hope you don't mind, but I'd like to, practice on you a little bit, if that's okay. I don't have any anesthesia or whatever, but I'm just learning as I'm going along. Hope that's all right with you. I mean, you're laughing because it's insane.
It's absolutely insane. But you know what? And me being in post for 20 odd years, I've seen so many of those.
Oh, I think I lost you.
Are you there?
Are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah. Anyways, so
no. I see so many of those through my course of work in post production that it's insane. Like, all these people, like, you just kind of like. Yeah, it's the only industry that people do that.
Yeah, it's like crazy. And like, I've talked to somebody who called and said, I finished my movie. I'm really proud of it. It was only 75,000, and the units were 5,000 each. So I had lots of friends and family and some neighbors, and everybody contributed. It's great. It looks really great. But Suzanne, I'm having a really hard time getting a sales agent. And I'm going, and they said, so I know everybody. I'd love some advice from you. And who should I go to? Given here's the genre of it. And I'll go, first of all, who's in it? Who's the name? Because it's of absolutely no value if there's no name. And they go, oh no, nobody. Nobody. But it's really good.
Well, unfortunately, the reality, I know that's hilarious, but I've heard that many times. Unfortunately, the realities of the industry, as you know as well as I do, is that there's so much product out there that there's a few ways that you can stand out. That you have to. One is insane quality, which is basically maybe 5 or 10 movies a year that are so good with no names in it that it just transcends and completely blows out of the water. There's maybe 5 or 10 movies, throughout the period. And those are the movies that do get picked up by festivals, that do get a lot of spotlight and all of that kind of stuff. There's that way. There's the other way of casting someone who is an actor of name, of some sort of name that has some sort of market value, that because their name is on, or their face is on the cover of the poster, people will go, oh, I know him. Let me go over there, because there's just so much dilution. Or another way is genre, which is becoming less and less, but still genre is genre. A horror movie doesn't need as much names anymore, though that has changed a little bit because there's so many horror movies. Action movies travel very well. They'll need specific names. But of course, you throw in a Michael Madsen, that helps.
That's right. You still need some. That's what they'll tell you. You still need somebody for the, for that poster, or whatever. And even years ago, they'd say if it's a giant spider for a horror movie, then the giant spider's enough. Now what they're saying is, the giant spider's great, but I still need another name. I still need a picture on that poster.
Sharknado is not going to do it all by itself.
And you're right. Certain, there are certain movies where, they go more the festival route because they were done more of an art house, and it's not about the name. It was about the phenomenal story and the phenomenal writing and the phenomenal directing. And there's a few of those pop up, like you said, every year. But I would not count on it. If you think you've got those and you want to spend your next year going to festivals and praying, that's great, and hoping. But I don't know. To me, hope is not the word that I use frequently in this industry.
In a business, you can't use the word hope. That's nice, but
it's a nice and I don't want to take it away from anybody, but I used to, even in Flash Forward, that month-long course that I did for years, Heidi and I, you were not allowed to use the word hope for the entire month of that course, by the way.
Well, like, and there's the other one, the other way of making a movie that I didn't mention before is what we did with This Is Meg, is keep the budget so, to a level that is so affordable that one, you could self-distribute it yourself and make your money back or be profitable. Or two, you can kind of just ride the wave a little bit and see what happens. There's no pressure. There's no stress. There's no investors. But you have to be able to achieve a high enough quality product for that to make sense, as opposed to just grabbing your iPhone and going out and make a movie. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. But that's another route of going about it. And we were lucky enough to have wonderful names involved as well, which helps. But it could have easily been done with a bunch of just really talented actors, and we could have gone down that path as well.
That's right. And you can do that now. See, because the technology is so available nowadays, you can shoot with your iPhone. That even a few years ago.
Tangerine, Tangerine, Sean Baker shot. But that was his fourth film. And he knew what he was doing. And it was, he basically pushed that phone and the image quality to the umpth degree. It wasn't like he just literally pulled it out of his pocket and started shooting. He had lens adapters and everything. But that's what people don't understand. But you can do it. And he did it specifically for look, for feeling, for the texture that he wanted as an artist. So it's definitely able to do it. And I want to just share one note. You were talking about stars. I posted a movie a while ago. It was a sci-fi movie, Sci-Fi Bend on it, and no stars. They finished it, went out to the marketplace. Everyone said exactly what you just said. Who's in it? No one's in it. Don't want it. So basically, and they had already spent, it was probably like a $300,000 movie, let's say, about $250,000, $300,000. So what they did is they went back, got one sci-fi TV show name for $5,000, got one movie star name for about $8,000, and they both worked for a day each.
My God.
They re-edited it. I had to recolor grade and refinish the movie for them. They went back out, and guess what happened, Suzanne?
What?
They sold it. Because they basically said, oh my God, we're screwed. So they literally recasted parts that were already filmed by another actor and replaced them with the name actor because they had to.
Yeah, I hear you. But here's the thing. We don't want to do that.
It could have been that's so much wasted time and money.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why if you put the business hat on now at the early stage, then even when you're reading, here's the other thing is I've read, I don't know, let's say hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of scripts, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. I get emotionally involved in the scripts, and I know I'm not a coverage person, and I'm certainly not an international coverage person. So even though I'm a producer and I think I'm pretty good at reading scripts, I still hire every single time. You had two people. One I do more for film and the other for television series. Same two gals I use all the time. I swear by them. I still have somebody do the coverage because, once again, I get involved creatively and I'm thinking, whoa, slow down, girl. Step back. You're a business person as well. I'm not saying don't wear the creative hat. I still do. I still read the script and do my notes, but I also send it to the coverage person. They're an international coverage person. They work for, a lot of companies around the world. So they're reading in a different way without any attachment, without any emotion, without any involvement, without any agenda at all, other than to do coverage, right? So even in that case, I kind of take a step back and stand in my business shoes. So in every aspect, Alex, I really you got to be careful because we're here because we're creative. We're all in this industry because we're creative. So we can get so caught up in that, like your friends did early on, with their movie, and it was probably a great movie, great script, and it just didn't have names. So it's like, oh shit. What do I need to do now?
I need to sell this. So what do I need to do to sell this? Oh, I'll go get some actors that will hopefully put them on the cover and I can make some money now.
So I think early. you know?
So let's talk about casting and actors a little bit. Now, how do you cast an independent film? Do you use casting directors? Do you go direct? How do you do it?
It depends on the project and on the budget size. But even in the early days when our budgets were between 5 and 10 million, right?
Well,
Back then,
which is beyond most people listening to this podcast.
Right, but that was my first film was one of those, right? I mean, that's what films were. Well, even
it was a different time. It was a different time.
Too, a lot of them were 1.8. Ours it started at about 1.8, but then it ended up, getting some great actors and that sort of thing. So it kind of took on its own life in a sense, and it ended up being around 400, about 4,500,000 or I mean, close to the 5. So, but still, here's the thing: Kate and I didn't have any money for those early films, so we did the casting ourselves of the main roles, all the main roles, and and back then those were big. That was Naomi Watts and Chris Walken and Brenda Blethyn and Alfred Molina. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we were business women. I'd been VP of marketing for a TV network. Kate was stockbroker for many years, and so I mean, we weren't what's called a guy in a diner. You know what I mean? It's
guy in a Starbucks. Guy in a Starbucks now.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of had our business. We were, certainly, wearing our business hats very well when we were on the phone, because that was CAA and ICM. We're talking,
No, those actors they're still big, but back then they were even bigger. They
were very big, yeah. And I started, and I was very honest with them. And back then, see, don't forget, different time though. Don't forget, those were called co-productions back then. So the UK, you get about 40% of your budget from the UK, and if you were doing Canadian UK, you'd get probably 30% from Canada, and then everyone used Lou Horowitz. You'd get 10%, what was called gap back then. I don't even know if people do that anymore. And then don't forget there were pre-sales. So everybody, including the agents and managers, understood that world back in the 90s and the early 2000s, where there were this wonderful thing called pre-sales, big pre-sales. We'd sold Germany for 500,000 in advance based on those couple of names, those early two names,
Now, so and just to go back for a little bit, so for people to understand what a pre-sale is basically a country saying, hey, we're going to give you 500,000 because we trust you that you're going to deliver a movie to us with these stars in X time.
That's right. Yes. And it was with those stars. And see, that's the thing, is that's not the way it's done anymore. Right. So back then, the big guys at ICM and William Morris and Endeavor and so on back then, they would say, they understood that we needed their name to pre-sell the movie. We did 1.8 million in pre-sales on my first movie, right? Then what you do is then you match it. Then you go to your investors and say, I've got 1.8 million. We're getting 80% of that because they're pre-sales or whatever, from the bank and so on. And there were big countries. Actually, it was the US. It was, I believe, it was Australia. It was the Germany. I mean, they were all good, solid countries and good, solid distributors at the time and so on. The first one being Miramax, so it was all very solid. That's when you can then go back to your investors, who you're also, you're also, trying to get those investors in the interim while you're out there selling. But then you can go back with some solid, here's what we need to do now is we need to match it plus whatever, plus the bank gap, for 10% and so on and so on. But that was the way it was done. So you literally used those names, and they knew it. Chris Walken knew it, for example, that we had to use that name to help with the pre-sales. His agent knew it. It was not an offensive thing. It was the way that business was done. That's the way that it was done. Because everybody raised a good portion of their funding in advance based on the names in the indie world. Well, probably even in the studio world, I would guess too.
But those days are gone, aren't they?
Those are gone. Yeah, those ended, 2004, 2005. The UK shut down, in 2004 as we knew it. And that was a very big place for all of us, as, a lot of us anyways, as indie producers. And I remember the day they shut down, we had 2 movies that were going in Australia, UK, Australian co-productions, and one was in soft prep. Thank God we weren't in pre or principal. Many were, but 29 movies shut down that day, in October 2004.
Wow.
So, I mean, the world shut down that day, but I just remember Australia because we had a movie there, that's all. But if you added up the rest of the world, I can't even imagine.
Can you talk real quick about soft prep, since you just brought that up? Just real quickly what soft prep is so people understand what that means.
Yeah. Okay, good. So a soft prep is usually in my world, the independent world, because my budgets have gone from $200,000. I've done a lot of the SEG Ultra Low. I love SEG Ultra Low, SEG Modified. I'm just absolutely think it's just fantastic.
We're gonna talk about SAG in a minute because I want to definitely get into that.
Love it. And it's so doable now with the digital cameras and all of that. We can do, oh God, visual effects. Oh my God, you should see time.
We'll get into it. We'll get into it in a soft prep.
So exciting. So soft prep. So here's the thing. You know how they say the lower the budget, the longer the prep, right? Well, sorry, we don't get that luxury.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
So, all I'm going to really have time for on a SEG Ultra Low is 3 weeks of pre-production, maybe a SEG Modified 4 weeks of pre-production, right? No, these are not in the millions here. These are 700,000 or 250,000. So I'm thinking, I can't do that. I would not be able to sleep. I'd have a nervous breakdown, if I had to do my casting. And I'll get back to the casting in a sec too. If I had to do my locations, if I had, to work on the budget and the schedule with my line producer, if my line producer had to, do all the keys, 16 keys during that time, we'd all have nervous breakdowns. So my soft prep is at least 4 weeks prior to pre-production. I make a promise in my PPM or operating agreement, can't remember which, to my investors that no money will be spent until the first day of a solid pre-production. That 3 weeks when we move into an actual production office, those 3 weeks of pre-production, if it's say Ultra Low, for example. But prior to that, I have my 4 weeks where everything is done for free, because if on that budget, I was definitely be doing the casting, all of the casting myself. Maybe I'd have a casting assistant who wants the title casting and she's doing it for $500, which I'll pay her when the time comes or whatever, when we start principal or pre. But I have my soft prep. And during the soft prep, Mike, at the time who was doing those movies with me as the line producer, he'd be out, with my director looking at locations because probably couldn't afford a location person at the time. And then I'd be busy with the casting. And we'd be getting a lot of those things done. He'd even be bringing some of the main keys on board. Wouldn't be paying them yet, but he, would. And location, for example, we booked the motel for Portal. Now we booked it. We didn't give them a deposit. We were what was called penciled in. We actually did the paperwork. We didn't sign it, but we said, if anything happens, please call us. If somebody comes in, if Spielberg's coming in and wants your space, let us know, obviously. But we got the hotel we wanted. It was penciled in. And on that Friday, and then come that Monday, I sent the deposit over.
Because you were officially in real prep at that point.
Exactly. So my director and my line producer were and my a lot of times the first AD, because he was working with the director early on too, working on the schedule, and none of those people were getting paid. And my DP, of course, was early on. So they were all with us. A lot of them were with us during soft prep, and that was 4 weeks, which 4 weeks plus 3, I was able to breathe. Then I promised my line producer that the minute we move into the production office, which was still my office, right, with his two people, with his production manager and their assistant, that I would be there for him. That those 3 weeks were about him. Hiring the rest of the keys. If he wanted me to sit in on some of the interviews with some of the keys, obviously I was there for him. I was there to sign the checks. I was there to, do whatever. I still had my jobs to do. I still had to hire my still photographer, and I was still doing stuff, working, with the investors and in terms of getting them involved, and who, sitting in on all the meetings in terms of schedules and so on. But my goal was to be finished with the big chunks of stuff so we could rest easy. And, I promised him that I would have all my cast deal memos done before we moved into pre-production. That all of it would, and he promised me that all location would be done in terms of in the same thing. So that was kind of what we did during. That's what soft prep to me is so very, very important. And I was very honest with people, just like I am with on the bigger movies with those sales with those agents. It's like I would call them, at ICM saying I don't have any money, but some people would hang up on me. Now what I would do when we moved into principal in some of those movies, on the big movies back then, is then I would hire the casting directors to then do everybody else. But I would bring on those initial 4 to 6 big names in those movies, like James Caan and Geneviève Bujold and Jennifer Tilly and who else? Any of those kinds of names. I would do all of that on the early ones, Kate and I. Mm-hmm. And then we'd share, we split it. And then on the smaller ones, then I did it all myself, except on Time Toys, that was, say, modified, which was a little bigger, and that was dealing with mostly children, and that is not my thing. So that's when we literally did hire early on and we did have some fun. We did have funding early on, actually, for a longer pre-production on this. So we actually hired a phenomenal casting director whose sole purpose was, children. She did a show.
So you brought up SAG. This is no mystery for a lot of independent filmmakers. Can you talk a little bit about SAG contracts? What's the differences between the low budget options that are available now, and how you work with them?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. If I'm bringing on somebody, let's say it's a SAG ultra low, right? I can't remember what the new one is since July 2nd. The new amounts came in. It used to be 100 a day. I think now it's 135. 100.
I think it's 125, something like that.
125, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to be using, and if you're doing the SAG ultra low, you can use quite a big percentage of non-SAG as well. Mm-hmm. But I would pay my non-SAG the same as I paid my SAG. Mm-hmm. The only difference is with the non-SAG, if your budget is very low and you're going to be using, let's say you're allowed 40% non-SAG, then I wouldn't be as responsible, for example, wouldn't have to feel as obligated to do, let's say if there's a rehearsal time, not that we'd have rehearsal time probably at that budget level,
right?
Or wardrobe fittings, or what's the other one? Or ADR. I wouldn't be paying for that. For them to come in for half an hour of ADR, I wouldn't. With SAG, you don't really have a choice. What I did in some cases when I knew I didn't have the money with SAG for, say, wardrobe fittings for some of the bigger actors, I would say, okay, you know what? I can't afford that for you to come in for that day because you're going to charge me for a full day and all we need is an hour. Mm-hmm. I'm going to send my costume designer over to you. And that would help save me sometimes a little bit of money, which every little bit would help. Mm-hmm. But with SAG, you really have to honor those agreements where you're paying for ADR. Mm-hmm. You're paying for for your wardrobe fittings, you're paying for, usually if it's rehearsal, I do the rehearsal on the same day as, they're coming in for the final wardrobe fitting. Mm-hmm, so I'm not paying twice kind of thing. And I tell my director that we're probably only going to get that one day, or half day or whatever, at that budget level. So, you just, and then if he wants to go and work with them separately, then that's their business and we're not paying for it, in terms of rehearsal.
So for indie filmmakers who understand, if you've never even worked with SAG actors, the minimum of a normal SAG movie is, I think, what now, $800 and some dollars, $900, $1,000 for a normal contract?
Oh yeah, I remember when I was starting, I think it was $750, and that was years ago. So it's been two upgrades since then. So it's got to be around $1,000.
Yeah. So normally, which is out of the price range from most indie, like really low budget indie filmmakers. So, and you want to have access to these really great actors who are a part of SAG. So this SAG ultra low allows you to basically pay them what you would pay a PA. Essentially $125 plus insurance and stuff, which is I think like $17 or something like that extra. So for under $150, you have access to really great talent. Of course, the talent has to agree to it, obviously. Yeah, sure. But you have that door opens to you. And as filmmakers making low budget movies, if you can get some of those name talents in there that are willing to work, or not even name talents, but just good quality actors at that price range, it opens the whole world up for you as an independent filmmaker.
And Alex, you're right, because, the whole idea was to stop runaway production. The reason that you've got these wonderful things is you've got to give the Directors Guild, I think, a lot of credit for lobbying in Washington for 6 years. Ironically, completely ironically, when the UK kind of shut down as we knew it in October of 2004, that exact same month, after 6 years of lobbying in Washington, the Directors Guild was able to get the government to create, inside the Job Creation Act, Section 181, which allowed investors of a certain, amount, 100% tax write-off, huge percent tax write-offs, depending on their what they made and so on. So it opened up America for the first time in many, many, many years. I think the 70s was probably the last time we had that opportunity. So, and what happened is the Writers Guild, not the Writers Guild, that was the last one, the Directors Guild and the SAG Guild really were trying to help in that whole arena of working on American soil.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
How can we stop runaway production? Not stop it, but at least bring it back, and have our actors and our makeup artists and all those wonderful, talented people in the film industry work here, because most of the time, if you're going to shoot up in British Columbia, I'm sorry, but you're probably going to hire majority actors from British Columbia and your, makeup artists from British Columbia and all those people, because you're getting a tax incentive based on your local spend, right? So, so they were losing for 15 years. They said at one point there was more movies shooting in Romania than there was anywhere across the whole world, West. So the SAG Guild and the Directors Guild were really wonderful in creating this opportunity for us. The Writers Guild, it took about another, I think, 6 years or whatever for them to kind of come on board. But it was really great, to be able to have this opportunity. And it was a win-win. Like people would say, oh, Suzanne, that's so disgusting. You're only paying your actor $100 a day. I remember on Candy Stripers going up at the end of the week to give people their paycheck. And the lead actor, literally, said to me, what's this? And I said, it's your paycheck for the week. It's $600 or whatever, right? And he said, what for? And I said, it's your paycheck for working. He said, I would have done, I thought this was free. I would have done this for free. I need the real, you know what I mean? These were a lot of new people and everybody wanted to work and he wanted to work to get the next work and the next work and the next work, move up and up and up and up and up.
Yeah.
So it was win-win. It wasn't anybody being stingy. It was like, guess what? We're all in this together. We're all able for the first time in American history, starting in 2004 or whatever, to be able to raise money to the degree that we were able to. We had two unions that were really forthcoming in allowing us to be able to use their incredible talented people in the Directors Guild and in SAG as well. And it was just a total win-win. And it was fun. I mean, we were all having fun. Now that's changed in the last couple of years, just because a couple of the other unions have really felt that it's not fair, that we should use all unions in anything, even from 50,000.
That's getting a little ridiculous.
So it's very hard now to shoot in California, especially, and certainly in many states on American soil. So it's sad that my next movie we're actually looking at Canada, which I don't want to. Trust me, I really want to shoot here.
Yeah, but business is business, and if the union pushes you too hard, you're like, well, you know what? Yeah. Then I have to take my business elsewhere.
Yeah, and if the budget is higher on it, then I'm shooting here. Once I go over the million, I want to shoot here. Yeah. But when you're under $1 million, it's just too hard. I'm sorry, but it's too hard. It's too hard on the producer, on everybody. To use 5 or 6 unions. But anyways, but from 2004 till, let's say to 2 to 3 years ago, it was phenomenal. And so many more movies were shooting on American soil and offering these opportunities to everyone in the industry, all the keys, all the crew, all the cast. It's been fantastic.
So we're going to end the show, Thank you so much, by the way, by being on the show. You did, of course, a fantastic job as you always do. But since last time, I've come up with a few things that I always ask all my guests, and I don't think I asked this of you last time. So there's two questions I always ask everybody. What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in life or in the film business?
The lesson that took me the longest to learn. Wow. Geez, that's really good, Alex. I didn't get that one last time. I don't think. Damn it.
It's good. That's my Oprah. That's my Oprah. That's my Oprah question.
I love it. That's harder than calculus, man. Okay. The longest to learn. I think. Oh man, there's a couple of things. First of all, my mind went blank. I think to ask for help.
Okay.
Is the first one that popped into my head. So I'm going to go with that first. I think there's one other important one. That's first is to ask for help. Because I think for some reason in this industry, I mean, in life in general too, we think we're lone rangers and we have to do it, on our own. God forbid, God should put, 7 billion people on the planet. There's a clue that we're not lone rangers. But anyways, we never look at that. We always think it's up to us, right? And I think in the entertainment industry, it's even worse. We really feel that for some reason we have to be lone rangers, and that's why I think even raising money at first was so hard for films, and then once we realized that it doesn't have to be just me and Kate, it's like there's a whole world out there that we can ask for help. So I think it's that is probably the first thing that comes to mind, and the other thing is that I think knowledge. I think, like we talked about before, it's you've got to get really smart about whatever business it is that you're in, and not so much to rely on other people, even though you want to ask their help, but you want to get to know what you're doing. I love to read contracts because, yes, I have an attorney, but that attorney has 50 other clients and he's busy doing 50 option agreements, So I want to be smart about that. I took a course on how to read contracts, and I read a bunch of attorneys' books for the entertainment industry. I want to be smart about knowing what I'm doing, So I think those are the two things that come to mind is to kind of, ask for help, be willing to ask for help. You don't have to be a lone ranger. And secondly, to kind of be smart about what it is that you're doing and, and that sort of thing like that.
And what are three of your favorite films of all time?
Oh my God, you're difficult today. Three of my, oh my God, that's so hard because I love so many genres. I love horror. I love romantic comedy. I'd have to say Little Romance. That's when I was falling in love, with my husband. That movie, Diane Lane, that's back in, late 70s. We were in film school and broadcasting school at the time. Little Romance is one of my favorite romantic comedies of all time. Certainly Harold and Maude, just because I know it's everybody's favorite. You can watch it. We've all watched 20 times. Certainly that's a classic. God, I love all the Die Hard movies. I love all the Lethal Weapons. I've seen everything probably 10 times. Anything sci-fi, I've seen 10 times. Those would be my two. And then I think, you know what, I have to say, one of my own, Undertaking Betty. I think it's one of my, honest to God, I mean, serious. As much as I love sci-fi and action and all that stuff, I'm a major action and sci-fi. And to me, it's like I say to my husband, if there's no car chase, it's not a movie, right? And he's always trying to drag me to art house movies. I would have to say I love Undertaking Betty. I've probably seen it 100 times because I had to, during all the different processes, but I would still watch it again 100 times. It's one of the funniest, best romantic comedies ever. And I also love the art kind of movies too. I mean, Eric von Looy's one of my favorite directors, and Memory of a Killer, I think, would be another one. Phenomenal, artistic a thriller. I love, those kind of art movies. Panic is another one. We lost that director far too soon. That's another kind of very artistic. I love artistic thrillers. I have to remember, I just saw that a couple of months ago, with Christopher Plummer. That's another artistic thriller. I do love the artistic thrillers too, but I think the first three that I mentioned will remain my first three for now.
So, Suzanne, I hear that you're going to be teaching a workshop this month. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I will. I mean, I haven't had time to do it in around 6 years. I've been busy producing.
Right. Actually making movies, right?
At one point. I did a lot of the classes on indie film producing, 2007. After I finished Candy Stance and Portal, those early ones, and I learned so much from those early ones, I thought I have to teach a class because I realized how many mistakes we were all making. So it really, the class takes you, but I haven't had time, like I said, for almost 6 years. And I'm limiting it to 12 people. Like I did, the last one I did was 12 people. It's nice. So it's intimate. It's wonderful. It takes you from the beginning, from optioning, everything from optioning the screenplay all the way through in tiny little steps, just like my book. I wrote a book on indie film producing for Focal Press back in 2011, 2012. And it takes you through all the steps along the way, because I think when we think of, oh my God, I got to produce a movie and raise $250,000 and do a SAG ultra low and get all that done, our head explodes and nothing ever happens, right? We hear people talking about it for 10 years. Or is it into little bite-sized pieces? It's like, okay, let's focus on this first. Focus on this piece. Focus on this piece. So that's what I do in the workshop. It's a one-day intensive, 9 a.m. till 6. I'll have 2 to 3 guest speakers there to kind of highlight certain areas that are kind of difficult for people.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And I'll take you through the entire thing. It's you get a copy of the book. You get a binder that's worth around $20,000, Alex, because
wow.
I include private placement memorandum, my operating agreements, SAG contracts, crew contracts, subscription agreements. A SAG ultra low budget is in there. An actual one, my seance one, is actually in there. It's real stuff. It's the real deal memos that we did on those actual movies, on real movies. So it's based on the making of the SAG ultra low and the SAG modified. I had a person in one of my classes whose budget was $25 million, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "I'm just going to map everything on." And it never occurred to me. So people of all budget sizes have been in there. I've had writers who are tired of waiting, who are coming in saying, "I'm going to learn how to do it." What I do recommend, Alex, is to have people in there only that are serious. If you're going to be shooting in the next 18 months, if you're not shooting your movie for 5 years from now, don't do the class now. Save the space because it is very limited. There's 7 people registered already.
Only 5 left. Wow.
There's 5 spaces left, and I've just got a call actually yesterday from somebody else, so I'm going to talk to him today. But it's very small because I think that's the best way to do it, because there will be a lot of questions and there's going to be a lot of concerns. It's a big deal, raising money. It's a big deal. Honestly, it's a year and a half of your life, 2 years of your life, and then being responsible for that baby for the rest of your life, right? Mm-hmm. Intense labor pains about to happen. So I only want to work with the people that are very serious. It's expensive. It's the early bird special, which ends tomorrow, actually, is $495. It's, the course itself is $595, which is what I've been offering, for quite a few years now, $595. However, for your guys, Alex, for anybody from the hustle, if they say they're from indie film hustle, then I'm going to stay not just with the early bird till next Sunday, which would be October 16th. If anyone from your group registers by October 16th,
okay,
they will not just get the early bird of $495, but I'll knock another $50 off, so it'll be $445.
Oh wow,
right?
That's so generous of you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. You're welcome. Well, I mean, you've been just phenomenal with me, Alex, and you're going to be continuing to be phenomenal with me. I know, because we've got this great friendship now with these podcasts and all this other stuff. So I really appreciate that a lot. And I've had a lot of wonderful thank yous from the early podcasts I did. So I want to thank you for that. But the course to me is incredible. If you go online and just even check the reviews from my book, I was looking at them yesterday. I'd never looked at them before. I almost cried. I mean, I really had no idea just how impactful and helpful. People said that they've tried to read many indie film books, and this was the only one they actually finished, because it really does set it up in a step-by-step. I'll even discuss how to do your accounting. So instead of it being $5,000, you can get it down to $500, with your accountant. I'll talk about taxes. I did my own like taxes. I did my own, all my own 1099s to help save the money on that sort of thing. Like my own marketing, I talk about the social media now that we've done that on Time Toys. We had to start a year early because we thought we might be self-distributing. So how do you prepare for the self-distribution aspect as well? How do you get to know the sales agents? I'm going to have a speaker talk about preparing for the American film market. So we'll definitely, because it's only 4 days later, right? After
Right, yeah.
On Wednesday, the 2nd of November. So we'll talk about how do you best prepare for that. Then Alex, you said you're going to offer to come in. You're a post.
Yeah, I'll be doing a little guest speaking on the post production and deliverables and all that kind of stuff as well.
And I can even get a sales agent to come in for half an hour. So hopefully you for half an hour, Heather, Heather Hale for half an hour. And then I'll get a sales agent to come in for half an hour, and we'll add some stuff to it. It's going to be, if I do say so myself, it's phenomenal, phenomenal class.
Now, guys, so you guys know where to go. Just go to indiefilmhustle.com/Suzanne, and that'll take you directly to all the contact stuff, all the contact information on how to get a hold of Suzanne and sign up for the course.
And just so you know, the course itself will be on October 29th. It's on a Saturday.
Here in Los Angeles.
A full Saturday. Here in Encino, Sherman Oaks, Encino. It's going to be at a business building, so it's free parking, which is nice in the business building. A friend of mine owns the spot. We're going to use it. It's wonderful. Lots of restaurants close by. You'll be with great people. I mean, the 7 people already that have registered, I would want to hang out with. They're nice. Active. One of the guys has already produced 2 movies. He did my class years ago. He's done 2, but he's teamed up with 2 new partners that are new. So they're doing it together. So anyways, it's a really good group already. I'm looking forward to it because I'm looking forward to learning from everybody in the class too,
Suzanne, thank you so much for being on the call. But thank you again so much for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I know we could talk for probably another 2 or 3 hours. But thank you again so much. You've dropped a lot of knowledge bombs on the Indie Film Hustle tribe. So thanks again.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me. All right, talk to you later.
I told you she'd be dropping some major knowledge bombs in this episode, man. I love Suzanne. She's a wealth of information, and I am going to be at that course, that workshop that she's going to be teaching later this month, because you can never learn too much. And my God, she is a wealth of information and has experience. So I wanted to definitely hear what she has to say. So guys, definitely check it out. There's only 4 spots left. So just head over to indiefilmhustle.com/Suzanne, and that'll give you all the information you need to call her, contact her, and sign up. So I'm going to give you a quick update on This Is Meg. I am currently working on a trailer for This Is Meg, so you guys can at least see a little bit of what I've done with this movie, and because it won't be able to be seen in its entirety for at least till next year, until we start going through the festival circuit. But I at least wanted to give everybody a trailer to kind of get a taste of what the craziness that I shot with This Is Meg. So I'm currently working on it. It is a beast to do a good one, so I'm working on it as we speak. So hopefully in the next couple weeks, I'll have something to show you guys. And as always, head over to filmmakingpodcast.com. That's filmmakingpodcast.com. And leave me an honest review of the show if you really like it. I really appreciate it. Helps us get the word out on what we're doing here at Indie Film Hustle. And if you want to go to the show notes for this episode, it's indiefilmhustle.com/105. And I'll have links to everything we discussed in the episode. So as always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com. Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast.